Hello and welcome to Web Vibe Only, where we talk about all things latest and greatest in web technologies and adjacent to those. Today, we are going to talk about chart libraries, and with me, I have Kyler Johnson. How are you doing, Kyler?
I'm doing great. Hello, everyone.
Have you used any chart library ever?
I have used quite a few over the years. A lot of these on this list, or at least a few of these I've used.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about 6 in particular that we thought would be of interest based on their NPM downloads and how frequently they're updated, or how frequently the new versions are released for them, and just in terms of community support, performance, and just general feedback that we've heard. Some of these I had never even heard of until we started looking into or exploring more charting libraries. But no matter what framework you use, no matter what your use case is, whether it's for a dashboard or for just a simple widget that you want or some interactive pattern that you want for your customers to be able to consume data, charts are kind of quintessential in any sort of an application, and they're just can be really challenging to implement. So we just thought it would be a fun exploration to do sort of a comparative analysis and also see how easy or difficult they are to implement, and just talk through some of their performance aspects and etc., things like that. Okay, so for you to make this demo or this conversation easier, we kind of vibe coded an application to highlight the 6 that we're going to talk about today, and then have examples from each of them to give you a better idea of how they might look like visually and just how to go about them. The first that we have is D3. What's your experience been with D3, Kyler?
So I think of D3 in terms of charts and charting libraries. I think of D3 as like a sort of a primitive. You're not going to have an API to just, create a bar chart or a pie chart. Instead, it gives you a lot of APIs that allows you to, basically programmatically do that yourself. And if you want to have the ultimate customizability in terms of what you can do, D3 is kind of what you're looking for. The limit is really your imagination with D3 and your knowledge of their APIs. It can be tricky. It can be a lot to understand and get started with. And then, depending on the framework you're using it with, you may or may not be using it with, it can be a little bit more challenging. Like different libraries use different diffing algorithms. Like to manage change detection and update what is actually rendered to the web page, and sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge with D3. But there are always ways to work around that. D3 is an ultimate powerful, like a very, very powerful low level API for creating whatever data visualization you can imagine.
Yeah, well said. It's free, it's open source, it works with any framework. However, it involves a lot of complexities when it comes to building it out, because the user is supposed to know how to do it. So you kind of look at the examples. They have a great getting started. They have documented it well, and they have good examples on what all the things that you might need, which kind of work well with plain JavaScript beautifully. But when you want to think of how to implement it with a framework, or just have it so that it aligns with your framework's performance features and things like that, you kind of have to think of it differently. But there's so many different kinds of visualizations that it offers that you can implement. And that is something that really stands out. I think it's also one of the oldest chart library that I'm aware of. Well, when you look at its current version, it's on version 7, and you can see it is frequently downloaded. It says that's how many zeros in that, like a lot of for it to be weekly downloads. It's quite extensive. So
yeah, this one ebbs and flows quite a bit. Last week, this was the average was about 4 million weekly downloads. So
interesting. Yeah. So, well, I guess you can say between 3 to 4 million weekly downloads. And I guess that's the thing with weekly downloads. It's not going to be consistent every time, but
yeah. So just to wrap up with D3, if you're looking for the ultimate control over your data visualization, D3 is going to give you that. If you're looking for a way to implement your standard bar charts, line charts, pie charts, those types of things, you're looking for a way to implement those quickly, I don't know if D3 is what you're looking for.
Right. I think if you want control over every single thing, and D3 just allows you to be as customizable as possible, then D3 is great, unless you just want a simple solution. We have so many other options for you. But let's look at eCharts. I have never used eCharts, which doesn't mean anything because I haven't used a whole lot of charting libraries in general. Have you ever tried eCharts, Skylar?
I have not actually. I played around with it a little bit in like some personal stuff, but I've never actually shipped it to production, so I don't have a lot of experience with it. But what I do have is pretty, like, I think pretty highly of this one. If you just want like a chart API to just to get some charts out there quickly, some that come out of the box with some pretty awesome animations and that sort of stuff, eCharts has a very good offering. And there are framework specific ports, I guess you could say, of eCharts, just like framework compatible wrappers for it, including for Angular, React. I think there's one for Svelte, Vue. So that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, and I really like how visually appealing just their documentation website is, and it kind of gives you a hint towards what their styling mindset is, or how visually appealing their charts look. And we have more examples to show you too, but I think it's very pleasing just visually because, like I said, like with D3, you are in control of how it ends up looking, but with eCharts, it makes you easy to get started and just have a simple solution out there. And in terms of NPM weekly downloads, we have less than 1 million for this one currently, but like it can vary, like we said earlier, but it seems that it's updated frequently. Last published was only a month ago, so it seems like it's well maintained and everything. Again, another open source free charting library for you. All right, let's talk about Chart.js. I think this one also has a very visually appealing website and very clear examples on how to implement any of the visualizations that you might need. I appreciate how well documented all of these are that we've gone through so far. Even if you are a beginner trying to implement data visualization for the first time, there's quite in-depth explanation on how to do that. They even have a step-by-step guide that you can follow to get a hang of it, understand the mindset of it, and just implement it.
Chart.js is the most widely used, with generally having 4 million to 5 million weekly downloads on NPM. And like pretty much everywhere you go, if you see graphs, there's a high likelihood that it is Chart.js. And Chart.js has a pretty distinctive style to them, so they're kind of easy to recognize when you see them across the web. But they're very common. You see them everywhere. It's an easy API to use and pretty well documented. Generally, this is one of the libraries you can get up and running and get started just, visually showing some data on a screen pretty quickly. And of course, this has been around since 2015, so there are well-maintained ports for just about every framework: React, Angular, Vue. I think there's one for Svelte. So just this one is a solid choice no matter what technology you're using.
Yeah,
definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, they say that they're on the 4th version right now, but I think they publish frequently enough. It says the last publish was 2 months ago. And again, it shows about 4 million downloads right now, but it's also so heavily used everywhere that it's not a surprising number at all. I'm going to admit that I did not know about anything about ApexCharts at all until we started exploring what all they are. But because they seemed really cool and well maintained, we kind of looked into them, and they're a solid solution for anyone who hasn't tried them out yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I had never heard of this either until we started looking into like some of the most popular charting libraries, and this one came in at around 1 million weekly downloads, which more popular than I realized. And they offer 16 plus chart types, but their API is surprisingly simple. And their charts are beautiful. They have some really cool animations. They have some really cool options. This library has pretty much everything you need to create a standard dashboard with all of your standard type, visualizations, pie charts, line charts, bar charts, that kind of stuff. They're all available here. And as you can see, the API is fairly simple. And there are, of course, framework ports for this library as well. Angular, React, all the standard ones. It's out there.
Yeah, and as you can see, I like that they have an example on CodePen also that you can play around with. And as you can see, they have 20 chart types, and they claim to have 1 million weekly downloads on their website. I think, hey, that's actually links to their NPM package. So they get close to 1 million. to get running up a little bit, but that's a lot of samples that they have included, which is just a great way of learning, and especially if you're just learning how to get started with any of these initially, having a great documentation to follow is a big plus, because these are the kind of things that you don't really learn from anything. These are the kind of learn from anywhere. These are the kind of things that you kind of have to figure out by yourself as part of your job or your requirement. There's no classes or courses you can typically take for things like these. There are no particular software engineering principles that you can stick to. It's just a charting library, and it's just based on how it has been implemented that you follow it. Highcharts. Let's look at those next. So I know Highcharts are another one of those where if it's not Chart.js, it's probably Highcharts. It's been around forever, and it's just a very popular one. And oh yeah, look at their disclaimer out here. Netflix, Samsung, they got the big logos that about 80 of the world's 100 largest companies use this with their charting solutions. I am not surprised by that at all.
Yeah, Highcharts is one that I've heard of for a long time. They've actually been around for a very long time, since as early as 2009. They've been around for a long time. They, of course, what you see today is a lot better than what they had for years, and they've done a great job as the web has grown and like user expectations of the web have grown. They have a long history of updating their visualizations to really capitalize on the web platform. You know, it's been really cool to see how their stuff has changed over the years, and it's some of the most beautiful charts that you could find today. And they offer over 30 charts, well maintained. And again, there's a bunch of framework specific ports for this as well. You know, Angular, React, Vue, all your standard major frameworks.
Yeah, they even mentioned Python, iOS, and R on their website and more. So there's really no limitation of whatever language you're familiar with. It seems like you can easily consume Highcharts to whatever you want to visualize. I'm really loving how they have so many examples, and all I'm clicking on is this change chart button right here, and you can get a look and feel of what it might look like when you implement any of these. So definitely check these out. There are also a plethora of examples of how to implement this if you still struggle based on what they have. It seems like their current version is 12.3. They're also, again, updated very frequently. So I think the only thing with this is that you might need a commercial license for an enterprise, but it's free for personal use if you ever want to implement it or experiment with it. And the commercial license is highly justifiable in my opinion. Okay, and last but not the least, we have uPlot. And this is one that I accidentally discovered on the interwebs and was like, whoa, the performance of this, or the implications of this, look amazing. However, the one thing that they're lacking heavily on is their documentation. If you look, their only documentation that they have right now is on their GitHub README, and they do have lots of examples and things that they want to highlight about on why this charting solution is better than the others. It's still not enough for someone who is maybe just getting started or is just trying to quickly implement a solution. They might still have to reverse engineer a lot of things to get this implemented. And sometimes that's what you need to be able to quickly split out a charting library. But if your focus is on performance or all the other good things that uPlot brings in your life, then this might be the library for you. But just be prepared to spend a lot of time trying to understand how to implement it, because it lacks severely in documentation.
In my opinion, this is when you reach for when you have like a kind of a niche set of requirements. So let's say like you just need some sort of ultra performance for a data visualization where the data that you're using rapidly updates. Think of something like a auditory flow or something like that. You know, you're monitoring sounds or just any kind of or real-time traffic data or real-time like stock data that's changing drastically every second. If you've got like a dashboard with a ton of these charts on it, it can be pretty hard on your machine to render those and re-render them every time you get new data in, sometimes multiple times a second. To keep that smooth, you need something that's very efficient. And if you find yourself encountering these types of performance issues with your charting library of choice, this might be something worth looking into for you. If you're encountering those types of performance issues, that's where I would look for something like this. This does have a limited set of features. This focuses kind of on like time series type stuff. Like what did this data look like at this point in time kind of thing is kind of where this one shines. As you can see from the examples, it has some bar charts, some line charts, some series, and that sort of stuff. But it doesn't have much in the way of other chart types that you might see, namely pie charts and stuff like that. Yeah, if you find yourself needing something that's more performant, this is something you're going to want to look into.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of demos, but that's what you need to look at and understand how to implement it based on the demos that have been provided, because they do make a very bold claim about performance compared to other charting libraries. But uPlot uses 10% CPU and 12.3 MB RAM versus Chart.js and ECharts that use 40% CPU and 77 MB, or 70% CPU and 85 MB. So if performance is your main area of focus while you're trying to implement a charting library and you don't want the browser to crash because the data is changing so rapidly, and you want to be able to capture all of that rapid changes and not just the end result and show the fluctuations and things like that in your data, then this seems like a really solid performance solution for that. And it's fairly new. It's a couple years old because they're still on version 1.6.
Yeah, the first version was in 2020.
Yeah, so I think they just got busy around the pandemic and like, we want to be able to highlight more data variables in a better way. So they just got this started. I'm excited. Maybe they would add support for more libraries and, sorry, not more libraries, for more types of charts that you can have. But yeah, speaking of libraries, I think they only have, for external frameworks, it only mentions third-party integrations, it only mentions React, Vue.js, and Svelte, and Python. Yeah. Your framework of choice is in one of these, or then I guess this is not an option for you.
Another thing I like about that documentation there is they explicitly call out non-features. Like this is not something that this library does. And there's a few things in there that a lot of other charting libraries have done. But the reason they don't is because to make a lot of those kinds of things generic to suit anybody's use case, you have to make some sacrifices in terms of performance. So instead of including that and the way the others do, they were able to get a little bit more performance out of that, but you'll have to wire that up yourself. If you wire that up specifically for what you're using, that kind of solution often turns out to be more performant than if you have just like a generic version that can accommodate a bunch of things. That's another cool thing that I think they've done here. So like I said, I think this is like a niche library that you reach for when you have a very specific use case where performance is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's more like choose your own adventure, choose your own library that suits your need, because there are so many other options out there too that we didn't cover today, but these are the ones that would, between one of these six, I think your requirement would be met and what you're looking for would be solved by either one of these six. But it just depends on what exactly you're looking for and which one you want to choose, whether more a variety of visualization options is something that you're more focused on, or performance is something that you're more seeking, or just having a highly customizable option is just what you need right now. Based on that, you can choose whatever you want. We also thought it would be really cool to highlight the three most common sorts of charts and how you can implement them based on either of these libraries. So we have these solutions for you, implementations for you for all of the six ones. And as you can see, this is just a basic implementation. And as you can see, there are some differences visually just from the starter kit that we had.
As we mentioned at the beginning of the video, we just kind of wanted to kind of get a visual of these to compare them. And, we didn't have a lot of time. So we thought it'd be fun to see what agentic AI was capable of for this. We basically just added these six libraries in a Markdown file, and we added that as the context for GitHub Copilot. And we told it that we wanted it to generate some charts for these 6 libraries. And we gave it a bunch of specific information. This is just a regular static site that uses Vite and vanilla JS. Not a lot going on here. I scaffolded the project, and then we asked GitHub Copilot to kind of fill in this stuff. And we had to prompt it a little bit, like, hey, we want you to do this, like put these in cards. We want you to kind of make them all the same size, roughly the same size. And there are some things like we had to address specifically, like D3 rendered just bars with no grid lines or anything like that. So for D3, we had to explicitly prompt it again and say, hey, we want you to include an axis, axes here and some grid lines and that sort of stuff, just to provide context. So we did have to prompt it a few things, and we had to do a little bit of tweaks for the uPlot. Those bars were very, very thin. So we wanted it to kind of be visually similar to the others. So we had to, read some documentation and go figure that out. The AI wasn't able to help us with that bit, but we got surprisingly far with these implementations. And this is just using basically dummy data that GitHub Copilot, we told it to generate some sort of data and use it across all charts. And that's what it did here. So all of these charts are rendering using the same data. And it just kind of gives you a overview of what the differences are in terms of style, and how far you might be able to get with a pretty simple prompt in just a few minutes with AI.
Yeah, which I think is really important to know and learn about how to use AI to implement something quickly and how far it gets you. And the fact that we had to prompt more for D3 to make it look like others kind of highlights what we were talking about it earlier, that it's highly customizable, but you have to do the work to get it to look like what you want. So whether that work is figuring out the customizations that you need and making it work by yourself or prompting AI to do it for you, it's a great way to just understand that this is what the bare bones are, and all of them, again, can be customized to a much greater extent. We just wanted to have a base example for bar charts and how all these charting libraries focus on different aspects of what needs to be highlighted and how the data needs to be represented when it comes to a visualization like this. Okay, and then we have line charts too. Again, similar background for these, that we just wanted 3 different types to highlight what the differences are. And we had a similar experience implementing these too, but some of these came just out of the box. We didn't really specifically ask for these controls for ApexCharts to be able to implement a line chart, and I think AI just wanted us to have these, but it's great to see what can be done without even knowing that you needed it or without even asking for it.
Yeah, that ApexCharts example is surprisingly complete for a simple prompt. It did that out of the box, no additional prompting necessary. That was pretty wild, all the options that it gives you out of the box for that. And then, of course, we had to do the same thing with the prompt here on D3. We had to tell it rendered just a line with no axes or grid. We had to tell it to add that. And of course, with the customizability, it's pretty simple. If you want to add some styles there, just use the attribute API, add a class, and then you can use CSS to style the grid lines as you see fit. The trick is knowing where in there to grab hold of those grid lines. Well, once you figure that out, it's pretty easy to style those. It's as simple as adding a class in D3. I think that's all we wanted to cover on this one, but a lot of the same stuff we talked about with the bar charts.
It amuses me that for uPlot, for some reason, they have this time legend that shows up that we also didn't ask for. We just wanted it to have a line chart with this exact same data, but it highlights this. So
what's an interesting thing about that, you see the time that it's getting rendered there on the screen. Mm-hmm. That's actually because we're in UTC -6 right now. So
daylight saving.
So anyway, it's actually, this is not a valid date. So what it's actually rendering there is it's grabbing like a Unix timestamp, and because it's not valid, the beginning of the Unix timestamp is going to be like January 1st, 1970. And what you're seeing here from 1969 is just the that UTC minus that math that it comes out at this time, which is UTC -6.
That's hilarious.
And that's just,
it shows up for all the charts. I mean, for bar charts.
So none of these use time series. So but uPlot explicitly says in its GitHub that it specializes in like time series type stuff. So I think that's why AI just added that, but it doesn't have anything to do with the actual data that it's rendering. Interesting tidbit there.
That's funny. And uPlot doesn't really have pie charts, and it's kind of impressive that AI knew that and generated that bit for us when we asked it to generate pie chart for using the same data. So that's also pretty cool. I think another challenge that we faced with D3, and again, this comes out to like how bare bones of a framework it is, because it wants you to be able to customize it the way you want it to be. We saw that all these other ones had some interaction pattern of when you hover over a slice of a pie, that it shows you either what the percentage is or what the number is compared to the entire pie. And it has sort of a tooltip. And D3 didn't have any, and we kind of had to struggle with, I guess it didn't work after all. Yeah, I remember we had to struggle with it, and it wasn't getting implemented the way we wanted it to be. So we weren't willing to spend too much time to figure this out.
Yeah, this whole experiment was just to see how far we could get with AI. We tried a few prompts. We probably spent like 15 minutes just trying a few prompts with specifically for D3 to kind of get it to show some things on hover. It had some implementations that would show some things on hover, but there were some bugs there. Like if we hovered over B, it would show us the data and color attributes for A instead. So like it was trying. It was buggy. Another thing I wanted to mention that we've run into is ECharts has some great animation, and it rendered all of this stuff with the with the denotations of the sections A, B, C, D. That legend type stuff. It implemented all of that out of the box, but notice that when you hover over that, it's not actually giving you the data quantity or percentage or anything like that. That's a consistent thing we ran into with eCharts, but luckily their API is pretty simple, so it's pretty quick. You can figure that out and add that yourself pretty quick. Again, we were just trying to see and demo how far we could get with AI here.
I think that's going to become important aspect of what library gets implemented the most, just like with Tailwind gets implemented the most, because it's been implemented so vastly that AI knows it well. And so it continues to implement it in its solutions, and that just a vicious cycle that you're kind of stuck in. But it's fun to see how all of these are implemented.
Another thing to note about this website is I did do the scaffolding for this. I told Vite to just start a new vanilla JavaScript project, and I did that before we did any prompting. So AI did not help with that, but Vite does all the legwork for you. It's run a CLI, select the options you want, and it builds it for you, scaffolds it out. The CSS for this was not great. It was terrible.
Yeah.
The generated CSS for this and I'm not just talking about the charts here. I'm talking about the layout of this like website we're using to demo this.
Yeah, the grids and just the layout of it, or the spacing and things like that.
The cards and all that. The styles were duplicated per page. Some were in style tags on various HTML pages. Some were in a global CSS file. Some were inline in the HTML. So styles were all over the place with AI. We cleaned those up a little bit manually. We weren't able to prompt AI to do that for us in a reliable way. Just something to note there. And I fixed some of the layout issues, but a lot of the beautiful styles you see here, nice lines across the top of the cards, and the color scheme, and
that gradient sort of thing.
Yeah, the gradient background at the top was stuff that Ankita added herself manually, and no AI prompting for that. Just pure talent and a little bit of effort. So we didn't use AI for any of that. So the only pieces that we used AI was to generate mock data and to see how far we could get telling it to render these graphs.
Yeah, exactly.
These charts.
It's also not fun to try to debug or maintain the CSS that AI generates for you. That can seem like a bit of a challenge. You can prompt it to do a lot of things, but we're not there yet. We still need a lot of human involvement.
Yeah. Also, random tip when it comes to styles and AI. If you're using frameworks these days, you almost have to tell it explicitly, I do not want to use Tailwind CSS if you don't want to use Tailwind.
Yeah.
If you do want to use Tailwind, it's actually better at styling out of the box that way, but then you have Tailwind. If you're a fan of Tailwind, that's great. If you're not, then
yeah, right.
You're going to have a lot of styles.
Yeah, one time I remember, and I know AI is evolving so rapidly these days that it may no longer be the case. But a few months ago, I tried telling it, do not use Tailwind, and it still used Tailwind. So it might listen better now, but it's just that it's everywhere and it's just easy to use.
It's easy for LLMs to understand.
Yeah.
And, to see patterns for.
Right.
So if you're watching this and you want to play around with the stuff that we made or look at the code for this project, it will be in the show notes. It's public GitHub.
Yeah,
you can pull it down and run it yourself.
Right, and you can fork it and try more AI prompts and see how far along you can get with either adding more charts, more types of charts, more customization options, more that tooltip for D3 that we didn't want to spend more than 15 minutes adding, but if you're able to add it in like 20 minutes, maybe we should have kept trying. Let us know. And if there are any other charting libraries that you think are worth covering or are at least worth digging through while trying to just analyze different solutions out there. Let us know if there's one that you have implemented or you want us to focus on. Definitely let us know all of those things.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in.
Yes, and till next time. See ya.